the barriers to entry for PM are very high. It's not incredibly difficult job, to be quite honest. It's not rocket science. But unfortunately, the way the industry is structured is such that the level, getting into product management is quite a barrier to a lot of us, especially if you don't, if you're not in tech right now, you're not, from traditional schooling background that prepared you for tech. Some tips to ease the transition and my lesson so far. Brief description of my journey is a very long-winded, long, winding road to PM because of circumstance. So I did computer science and economics at Carnegie Mellon many years back. But because my education was paid for, sponsored, I couldn't really decide what I want to do. I had to go back to serve in the military because the military paid for my education. But before entering military life, I want to enjoy the last bit of civilian life. So I decided to do something on my bucket list. I went to do some martial arts training in Henan, China. Not exactly a break or a holiday. Goodness knows why I make this kind of decisions. But in any case, I thought it was fun. Yes, so after that, I went to the military. I went to air traffic school, completed some training before I went into operations. I was an aerodrome controller and also a staff officer at the Ministry of Defense. So that's the headquarters for policies and defense regulations and stuff like that. After 6 or 7 years, I decided to leave the military. I wanted to change in career. But before that, I took another break. I like to take a lot of breaks, obviously. Breaks are great, actually. Working too much is not very good for your soul. It's not good for inspiration. You're not, you're missing out a lot if you don't take enough breaks. So I took a teacher training course in Nasik. That's in India. And I also did a bit of traveling in India. That was really fun. But I cut short my original plan because I realized that I ran out of funds. Now, when you're trying to transition, when you're trying to do a career change, in general, I feel that it's very silly to pivot when you don't really have any plan, in sight. And that was what I did. I was not very wise in that, on hindsight. So I know I want to leave, but I didn't have any backup plan going on. And when I came to realize it was a little late, I was running out of funds, and I realized I need to get a job. So I went back to the public sector, the sector that I wanted to leave in the first place. But I was lucky. I got a job at some regulatory body. It was new. It was set up to regulate the data privacy for Singapore. I enjoyed my job very much, and it actually was a very good stepping stone to my my goal, which was to get into business school. I applied, got into Kellogg School of Management, and from there, everything became a lot easier because of Kellogg's name and because of all the training I got during MBA. So after MBA, and I'm sorry if I'm droning on, after MBA, I took a return offer. I was interning for Microsoft, and I took a return offer and decided to work with them as a PM. Now, you might sense that this is going to be a talk about MBA. A lot of it is, but I'm not stressing. I'm not saying this is the only option. Anyway, these are some of my pictures. On the left is me in the official uniform. What I was doing, I was a sword bearer at my friend's a fellow officer's wedding. The top picture was me at the APEC summit as a delegate. This was one of the first pictures taken at Microsoft, me and my fellow interns. And the last one is a typical MBA class meeting where meetings are always very intense. Just the way MBA goes. So I wouldn't say I'm a very seasoned PM, but I've done a lot of pivoting, probably more pivoting than a junior PM should do. But on hindsight, it has taught me a lot, all these different various roles. Right now, my role is PM at Bing, a lot of search-related type of task. By far, it's my happiest role so far. I'm learning a lot. I'm doing a lot of consumer front-end experiences, search experience, and multimedia assets. So a couple of growth hacks, and also general mobile growth strategy. A lot of stuff, a lot of hats you have to wear, and that's in general how a PM's life looks like. You wear a lot of hats, you do a lot of things, you dabble in a lot of stuff. Before that, I was in more of a back-end facing kind of role. I was doing the data infrastructure, so basically tools and processes for managing big data, large amounts of data. If you've heard of stuff like data lake streaming, basically I was a PM that managed products like that, but for the internal Microsoft employees. And before that, the role that I spent the longest in was Dynamics CRM, which was renamed to Dynamics 365. That was pretty different. It was in the enterprise industry, so a very different set of customers from the consumer end. And it was very much SQL-based solutions, writing off SQL, database kind of solutions. Okay, so the MBA route. This is getting to be one of the more popular choices. Sorry, I mean PMs. The PM role is getting to be one of the more popular choices for MBAs from the traditional MBA kind of jobs like consulting, marketing, and so forth. So that was one of the reasons that stood out to me on like, why is MBA one of the, the educational path I chose as opposed to like, maybe a master's in CS or like, other reasons like management, technology management courses, for example. But I digress a bit. Let me go back to the presentation. So my personal reasons for choosing the MBA, the 2-year MBA, which is the traditional MBA, were as follows. I was at a point in my life where I want to be absolutely sure the choice I make will pay off. Not just financially, but emotionally, in terms of time and everything else. Coming from the public sector and the military, which is a very niche type of industry, I didn't really have a very good sense of what is it like to work in corporate or private culture, or like where there is profit involved. And I thought that it's probably safer to go through the MBA route where you are given very structured, a curriculum and slowly introduced to that kind of life and career. Also, I wanted a general education for the longer term, just in case PM doesn't work out for me. You never know, right? Anyway, people pivot their career in their career all their lives, and also in case my interest evolves. And also one more thing, if you're looking to take on management roles, I think an MBA also would be very helpful. It does not mean to say that you should consider the 2-year MBA. There are other types of MBA like executive MBA, 1-year MBA, and stuff like that. The MBA provides a ton of networking opportunities, and I wanted to capitalize on that. Lastly, the most important reason for me was that I was a foreign student, and I wanted to take advantage of the benefits of being a student in the US. If you are familiar with the F1 OPT CPT, that allows you to work in the US after you graduate from schools, and I think it's about a year. You can work during internship, and you can work for a year after that without a visa. Why did I want to work in the US? I wanted to work in the tech industry. That was pretty narrow in my home country in Singapore, especially in startups and PM. There weren't a lot of roles available. So I naturally looked to the US because that is like, the best place to hone your skills as a PM. Okay, so I talked about myself, but now let me go through the general reasons why people choose the MBA route for PM, even though it is not a traditional MBA role to many. So the pros, it is easier to transition to the PM role for the various reasons. You have incredible resources around you. The alumni, the peers, faculty, they can connect you to a lot of other people who will eventually help you get to your job. The on-campus PM recruiting, no, not necessarily just PM recruiting, the on-campus recruiting structure is so well-oiled that you get doors open to you that's not necessarily open as easily, when you're coming from the outside, or what we call from the back door. There's a lot of coursework, not PM specific, but it definitely helps to improve structural thinking, presentation skills, and all that. You'll be doing so many presentations that even though you're like super introvert as what I was when I started out, it's like you get pretty used to it, right? You can kind of fake it till you make it. Yes, peer training and support groups. I cannot stress this enough. Like I really, really need to thank these because they provided so much practice opportunities, and that's really important in interviews. That I feel that without them, I just wouldn't have been able to pass the interviews as well. Especially, there will be a lot of interest groups on this kind of campus, like veterans or marketing and so forth, that you can definitely take advantage of in the MBA program. And also, if you're still undecided, yeah, of course, you should take advantage of the other career options they have. Yes, even though you want to be a PM right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be a PM forever. I want to stress that. It's not that I'm unhappy with it right now, but I mean, you need to look long term, and I think the MBA kind of helped you prepare for that, to know how to look beyond the present stage. Okay, so comprehensive career and guidance, I mentioned that before. Yes, a lot of stuff like resume writing, polishing applications, interviewing, negotiating offers and all that. There'll be a ton of campus resources available to you, and also peer support groups to practice against. However, there are a lot of disadvantages as well. So to be very honest with you guys, the MBA, as I mentioned, is not specific to PMs. Like for myself, there was only one really relevant course to PM, and it was called product management. Everything else was about marketing, operations, finance, and they go very deep in those areas. PM, however, not so much. You kind of have to know how to extract the lessons from the other courses to apply to PM along the way. It's not impossible, it's definitely been done, and I've done it, but the connection is not as apparent. It's incredibly expensive. If you talk about tuition and living expenses, it's $200,000 for a good school, right? Opportunity costs, it's a no-brainer. It's 2 years of lost income and then possible career advancement. Not to mention social costs, like your social life will take a dip because you have to balance coursework, recruiting. Recruiting is no joke. Recruiting is like a huge amount of your time, and it's incredibly stressful because you are put in the place of type A people who are all going for the same roles as you are. So to consider yourself, try to consider your psychological well-being as well. However, there's also a lot of support. So it's like, it goes both ways. Like you make friends and also that you're competing against them, but in a way, it all turns out to be pretty well. As I mentioned before, no, I did not mention this. The MBA traditionally was scoped for MBA roles. And traditional tech companies may not necessarily give you an advantage just because you're an MBA, right? Like newer ones such as the MBA, like Amazon, they recognize MBAs, the value MBAs, and they specifically want to hire MBAs over the other people. In my current role, I feel that it's not necessarily an edge to have an MBA. I mean, as long as you can apply that kind of thinking, you are valued. So if you are thinking of doing an MBA just to get into PM, it might be pretty expensive in terms of the ROI. The last point, yes, it's quite a long path to PM. I feel 2 years because I'm very impatient. And then Brian wanted me to mention that, there's other courses available that can shorten the path your entry into PM. I want to stress that if you choose to do the MBA route, it's very important to get into a school with reputation. I'm not saying this because of snob appeal or anything like that, but the name really makes a big difference, and also the curriculum, the support that you get, and the networks. So if you are really, really trying to do it via MBA, I know the GMAT is a pain, and I've taken it twice. Try to get good scores because, or anything that can help you get into a good school because it will pay off.
Evelyn, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
What's your take on doing an MBA online versus one on campus?
The MBA online gives you the probably similar curriculum as well. Like you will miss out on the one-on-one interactions with friends, the social kind of value you get, and also you probably will not get an internship. Like for me, the internship was instrumental for pivoting from a non-traditional background. You're kind of given credibility that, oh, you are from this school, okay, I will just hire you as an intern because an intern is a lower risk than like a full-time hire. I think for online courses, you don't get the benefit of that. Similar for one-year programs. And actually, I think one-year programs are less popular with people who are trying to switch because they have a way shorter program to help them transition, and also they don't have the internship. I hope I answered the question.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if you decide to take the MBA route, there are some strategies for making your experience worthwhile and making your money, getting a bang for buck for your money. So, as I mentioned before, there are a ton of courses, right? What do you want to, how are you going to manage them? Like, I would say go for breadth and variety. What you want to do, your strategy is to actually train your mind, your way of thinking, different ways of thinking, and going for different types of courses help you, think differently, say things differently, interact with different kind of people who are interested in that. Finance and analytics courses really train your data acumen, and it's very important these days where PMs start to use a lot of data to back their, what they do in their work, like recommendations, what to build, and so on and so forth. Negotiations and organizational behavior classes, what I call very fluffy courses at the beginning. I kind of have I snub them, but I'm starting to realize the value they have in my day-to-day role, especially in how you deal with people and how you communicate in various channels like email and so forth. Marketing and strategy courses, although they sound very tailored to business, and a different world, they actually teach you how to ideate. They teach you from the perspective of a business. How do you pivot from the point of view as a business, right? But for us, we can apply it as how do you pivot your product? It's actually pretty similar. You see there's a lot of value that you can transfer over when you think about product. And also it teaches you how to capitalize on opportunities, and look for gaps. Try to do as many course projects and internships as possible, like practicums. Try to do them because they are, in a way, like internships. They give you hands-on. It's also a very good thing to add to your resume because I think one of the biggest hesitation hirers have when they look at your resume is that these experiences don't translate. You're from another industry. Why should I hire you, right? So aside from writing their language, like tailoring all your experiences in the PM speak, you also want to highlight very PME-like experience. So I think these kind of courses are very valuable. The last thing is try not to skip so many classes. They're very expensive, and you lose out on knowledge and your grades as well. Although grades don't matter, that's what they say. Okay, there are other ways to transition. MBA is not the only way. I have friends who have tried out these ways also. For them, there are various reasons. Maybe on campus hiring didn't really work for them, so they went through the back route. Startups. I have only worked for one startup in my entire life, and that was many years back, so I can't really speak very much to it. But for friends who have worked in startups, and those tend to be Americans, because international students tend to be a bit wary of startups for very good reasons, because they don't really, they're not as generous or as ready to sponsor, international students. I'm talking about the practical reasons. So for people who want to remain in the US, this is also a very important point of consideration. Right? But for my friends who worked in startups, they say they learn a ton in a very, very short amount of time. It's 3 years of PM in big tech condensed into 3 months. I don't know if it's real or not, but that's what they say. If you are working in a tech company already, well, great for you, right? You try to switch roles within the company. And I think this is very safe because you can leverage on your network, the people you know, and also there's a safety net. You're in the same company, right? You can kind of test it out before you actually leave the safety of your current role. And also you have networking opportunities within your company. So I mean, I would highly encourage you to try switching within the company if you can. And there's always ways to find reasons for that. You can cold call people and try to network. You can also work for a client or a partner, like maybe a supplier, your customer, and so forth. You can do like side jobs, like you can do it in a favor, like in the PME way. Okay, I'll not see the ideas in the head. And also there are like side projects or pro bono within companies, within the company. I know when I was doing my internship, there was another PM who was doing like free consultation work for another team, and he got the role with the other team because he wasn't very happy with his current PM role, which turned out to be more like business management type of role. So you can definitely look for opportunities like that. Okay, the stepping stone role versus a dream role. This is a very real contention that we have. As I mentioned, the high entry barriers. So switching is not easy. Any career change is not easy, right? Sometimes we need to be realistic and know that it's not likely we get our favorite dream role the first time. If you get it, great. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. So there are times we have to take like a bit of a hit and take like a stepping stone role. It may not be the perfect role, but at least you should make sure that you will learn something out of that, right? That you can use to expand into your future roles. Let me give you an example. When I first accepted the role for Microsoft Dynamics 365, I thought it was a great opportunity. It wasn't really my dream role because I was very interested in consumer space. Like I wanted to do products that end consumers work on, like phone and all that. Enterprise space is great, it's very safe. Not my dream role, but I thought that because there were skills and traits that team recognized and they were actually looking for MBAs then, I capitalized on that. And I built up certain PM skill set with the end in sight that I will be able to use these skills to transition to my next role. Yeah, so like don't feel bad if you're not getting your dream role at the first opportunity, because sometimes it takes, well, I took 2 pivots to finally reach this role, and that took me about 2.5 years. Okay, essential PM roles. And I think this is not an exhaustive list, but I think these are the essential ones. Product and market sense. What I mean by that is like understanding, having a sense of product, what to build, what not to build, having some bigger picture of the whole thing, visioning, understanding the landscape, the competitive landscape, understanding the user, why they're using it and all that. And then also risk management, like when you're building something, right, there is also a trade-off. You need to understand all of that. All this I club it into product market sense. Just to talk a bit about what the value MBA brings. When in the MBA, you learn a lot about bigger stuff, bigger strategy sense, like marketing, market sense, competitive analysis, Porter's 5 forces. This can be very useful. And what you need to do if you do it via MBA, if you learn it all that through MBA, is you have to translate that to product. And the product that in the MBA curriculum is not necessarily a tech product. It could be all types of product. But I'm just saying that you can always, like glean lessons from that. The execution skill is a very important part of the PM skill, because PMs are supposed to organize the entire project. If you don't have organization and tracking skills for yourself, it's going to be very difficult to do that for your team. So I highly recommend that when you're in a PM, right, try to have a very structured role of organizing your life, like mail system, right? note tracking, and so forth. Like for me, my go-tos are Outlook, OneNote, and I set certain triggers. If this deadline is not met by then, or I have to do something, and so forth. So in any ways, I'm trying to say is that you need a system to organize yourself. You must know how to prioritize limited resources, your own as well as others. Your own is the most important because you will find that time is very limited, right? And I'm talking about the holistic sense. It's not just time at work, it's time for your social life, for your personal time and all that. You will want to have a very balanced life because when you are too into work, you're overworking, right? It actually takes a toll on your inspiration, at least for me, and your visioning and all that. You don't get as creative. You also need to learn how to estimate payoffs. In my current role, I do a lot of that. I will estimate, like, okay, if I build this feature, how many more users do you think that would bring? And then how much more revenue, like revenues per click, do you think that will go, right? There's always a lot of iffiness associated with that, but you need to have like some kind of an idea, a good structure to like estimate, payoffs. Why? Because that is a very important way to convince your team to build and do certain things. With payoffs, the converse is trade-offs. Again, not that I'm selling the MBA, but during the MBA Live, you will do a lot of trade-offs. You practice that so well because you have to trade. You have to decide between social life and personal life, recruiting, and causes. It's like going to school. So yeah, trade-offs is also it's a very important problem you face in PM. What to build? Why do I build this instead of that? Oh, I only have 3 devs. Well, I can only build so and so amount of features, and also understanding the skill set your resources have, right? Okay, communication. PM's role is a lot of communication. Because you are sort of like the glue in like making the product work and driving the product. So you communicate with many types of people in many different settings. You have an engineering team, you have external stakeholders, you will have the legal team that you have to persuade sometimes. You will have your customers who cannot wait to get hold of your product, but you just have to like hold that off because like legal issues and you're slipping the production time and all that. There's no wrong, there's no right. The thing is that you need to understand your stakeholders and speak to their needs as much as address the fact that you have your own constraints and communicate that clearly. Communication is very important. The last part, data analysis, getting more and more important these days, especially in the very highly competitive world of consumer products. Enterprise is also very important, yes, of course. But I think traditionally for the enterprise world, you already have an established set of customers and partners who've signed certain contracts for a length of time. So I think enterprise, when I was in enterprise at least, I was pretty spoiled because I know that certain decisions I make will not cut off ties with the customers. They are already kind of in it and invested in it. So I can make certain decisions without being fully backed by data, not a good thing. And then we can also cut ourselves some slack by not being so, not measuring our data very well, also not very good. But for the consumer world, it's very, very different. It's very, very competitive. Every single click matters. Every single metric, user signal is measured. And that is the way it is right now in like most consumer spaces, Pinterest, Google, everything. They measure every single user signal. So data is very important. You need to understand data, use it to back yourself, to back your claim, back your value proposition, make decisions. And the last point about tools actually apply for PM as well. I know for an engineer, like you need to know your tools very well to be very good at it. Yes, please. Yeah.
So data analysis, I see all that SQL scripting and all that, pivot tables.
Yeah.
How do non-technical person do that?
You don't necessarily need to use SQL and scripting. For me, even though I know how to script and use SQL, right, I resort to Excel most of the time because it's very fast And SQL is low entry to barrier. It's quite easy to pick up SQL.
So
Sorry,
without,
Excel. Yeah.
Without technical skills?
Totally. You can use, like, for my current role, like, Excel is enough to answer a lot of questions. Yeah, so.
I know the basics, but
yeah.
I'm not into coding, you know.
No.
I'm a recruiter.
To be very fair, I hardly code. I don't code in my current role. I don't think I need to know coding. Honestly, I can get by. I can do a very good job without coding, I think. But I need to know how to analyze data. And you can pick your tools. I pick Excel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So know your tools. Whatever tools you decide to stick with, know it very well, understand it very well, because you will rely on it. You will see a number and you're like, I'm very sure that number is correct because I did this and this. No, rather like look at your numbers and it's like, oh, I'm not sure how I got there. So that's very bad. Okay. Interviewing. If you got to this stage, congratulations. Because yes, it is quite a feat. So I want to talk about certain questions that you will face. And again, there are tons of good interviewing resources out there that I encourage you to read. This is again not meant to be comprehensive, just like a reflection of what I've been through and what I think I want to call out, because I keep seeing these kind of questions. Okay, design questions. How do you design a lamp for the blind? How do you design this and that? How do you design an elevator that is intelligent? Stuff like that, right? And then this kind of stuff you can just read through product management books and learn how to practice and do that. The more you practice, the more you realize a structure is coming to you very naturally. At the beginning, I don't have the structure. I forget all about structure and I just ramble on. But I assure you, the more you practice, it comes to you more naturally. So practice is key. Same with everything else. You also get questions like, sometimes people give you a scenario or give you a data chart, and ask you like, okay, what do you think is wrong? Something is wrong, something doesn't make sense. Problem solved for me. Example, I have a chart of usage patterns. Everything's going great, and suddenly there's a drop. Can you give me all the reasons, internal and external, why do you think this is happening? Why is click rate dropping all of a sudden? Then you come up with reasons like, seasonality, technical problems, blah, 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 blah. Right. Again, I'm being very iffy and fluffy, but I'm happy to go into details if you want. All right. Okay, deciding what to build. Give me your criteria for deciding to build this versus that. Why? Actually, not very difficult. Like this one, you can talk about like returns on investments, payoffs, user delight, so many things. Like just come up with your own reasons. As long as it makes sense, there's no real wrong or right answer. It really depends on context and scenario, right? So as long as you have a good set of reasons to back up why you make these kind of decisions, I think you will do fine. All right, backlog and feature prioritization. I get a lot of that. Why do you, how do you prioritize your backlog and all that? How do you measure the success and failure of a feature in your product? Depends on the type of feature and product. This one, I see more and more of that, especially for like the internet kind of companies. They will ask you like, what kind of matrix or counter matrix do you think you should introduce for whatever you're building, whatever features, and fraud detection and so forth. What do I want to say? Yes, I want to stress that I find that when interviewers ask this kind of question, they usually have a scenario in their head already. It could be a recent problem they're tackling or a problem they are stuck at. So they want to test it out on you. Now, you will have no idea what they're thinking about. So it's very important that you clarify what the scenario they have in their head, or speak through your own scenario, like describe, like, I'm thinking of this because I'm imagining this scenario, right? Then the more you describe where you're coming from, your scenario in the head, the more you will try to close the gap between the interviewer's scenario and your own scenario. Otherwise, he will think that this guy is dumb. He's not really answering my question, when in fact, he is not really communicating what he has in his head to you. Yes, managing difficult people. This is a very real thing. But sometimes when I get these interviews, I feel it's very strange. I don't know how to answer. So I'll ask for like, what kind of scenario are you talking about? Or is it like development? And then, the interviewer will go into details and it's like, okay, yeah, my dev manager wants to build this and, I have some ideas in mind. So again, clarify the scenario and then explain, your way. There's no wrong and right answer as long as you are being genuine, like doing things the way you do anyway. Explain your reasoning. I think it's not a problem. I think they just genuinely just want to find out how you deal with people. How are you doing on time?
Good.
Good. Okay, good. Okay, some tips to calm nerves. Of course, this is not exhaustive. There are a lot of other ways as well, but I generally resort to the whiteboard a lot because I like to stall. A lot of times you get questions that you're like, you need to think through, right? You just don't, give out answers like that. There's a lot of thinking involved. So you need time, and it's fine to ask for time, especially, and they will understand it, right? You don't memorize the answer. So I use the whiteboard to, repeat the scenario, like, take notes when he's talking. And I was like, okay, take notes. And then if you need to ask him to slow down, do so. Then you can write slower as well. I do that to organize my thoughts, to remember things. I use that to illustrate my points. Because sometimes I feel that I ramble on. So I like to use like writing to actually keep me on point again. And it's also very useful to have things down, staring in front of you on the whiteboard because it reminds you of like stuff you talk about. For example, if you go through a list of problem solving, a list of like reasons for a certain problem, right? You can say, okay, I've gone through this, I don't want to repeat myself. So it's a very organized and visual way to track the interview. Paraphrasing also helps because sometimes you want to clarify what he's talking about and sometimes you already know, but you just want to buy time. Helps ensure that you're on the same page as an interviewer and buying time. I cannot stress this enough, but the more you practice, the more you just ease into a certain structure. It gets, I wouldn't say second nature, but you just ease into it. And after a while, I found that for me, I just don't really need those like structure anymore, like Porter 5 forces or like this. Like, you just go naturally in a conversational style. You can even guide the conversation to where you want covered instead of where the interviewer wants, right? So again, practice as much as possible. Try to find like groups, fellow PMs. Try to reach out, connect with people. When I was in Microsoft and I was trying to pivot, I cold call a lot of people to practice interview with me. That's definitely very helpful. When you pass the interview and you finally got your foot in the door, again, big congratulations, but it's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of it all. And it's going to be a pretty steep learning curve. But there are some tips I have on hindsight after what I went through to help. So I'm not sure if every team has this kind of new PM resources, but if they have it, awesome. Look for it, ask people like, is there like a set of guidelines for new PM? Internalize it, and I really understand it. But after a while, like, forget about it. You have to create your own PM rules. You might come across, you might realize that everybody is speaking in a foreign language, like incredible jargon, and I find that a lot, even when I was pivoting in between Microsoft. You don't understand any technology words they're talking about, but that's fine. I think it's very normal, like especially established companies that have been doing that stuff for a long time, they have their own language. So what you can do is like during meetings, take copious notes, just write down every single thing that you think is being said, even if you think you're not spelling it correctly. Then when you have time after the meeting, right, try to find someone to ask questions, like enunciate, like, what is this, whatever, Scrum, like, they're talking about. Even if you mispronounce it, they'll be like, oh, you mean this? And then you start, slowly things will start to sink in and make sense. But other than that, also just take a lot of notes. It helps to like remind you and of stuff and then keep track of things. Very important to find mentors, but not necessary to formalize the relationship with them. What I find is that people are kind of like, you want me to be a mentor? When I ask them, it's not necessary to make it a very formal relationship. You can also learn from people, when you interact with them. For me, I will just identify people that I think, okay, there's something about this person that I really admire, I want to learn about. So in my mind, they're mentors. I don't tell them they're my mentors. What I find is that it's good to have one mentor that is like an expert in their craft. Like there's this lead I work with. She's an incredible executor. That sounds wrong, executor, but she's incredible at execution, like making pardon me, making things happen, like running things, like she's incredible memory, or like keeping tracks of things and all that. So I joined a team. So I want to learn from her, right? She's not my manager, but I just kind of joined a team. So master of the craft is very important. Another one you want to find a mentor is your advocate, someone you think appreciates you or always have your back, speaks well of you. Why? Because when you're new in anywhere, right, you need to have an advocate, right? So try to find someone who's like, kind of likes you in a way. The more senior, the better, of course. The third type of mentor I'll look for is, and this one may take a bit of time, is someone I work really well with, like sort of my peer, someone that can be like really honest with me, like, hey, I think you're being very dumb in a meeting, or like, I don't think this is possible, who just can be very frank with me and bounce off idea. Now, this relationship is very, very mutual, right? I help you with stuff, you give me feedback on stuff, and it supports you along your PM role. The fourth one may come much later, but if you can, try to find like someone to mentee, like a reverse mentor kind of thing, because this is a way to, it's a kind of a reflection of yourself in terms of like your PM journey. Not necessarily like right now, because you may think that, oh, I'm such a new PM, like, how can I mentor everybody, anyone at all? You definitely can. You can mentor someone who is also trying to transition into PM. You can mentor, someone from your school who's starting out in a career and all that. It doesn't have to always be PM related. Fourth point, connect with PMs inside or outside of work, network as much as possible. Try to use them as practice interview resources. And regular things, what we call in Microsoft one-on-ones with people. Now, I think in work, right, every relationships doesn't have to take on a very formal tone, and I think you put people more at ease when you just want to try to get to know them as a person. So one-on-ones, like, just to check in with people, like, and ask for feedback, or just like, hey, I want to get you know better, like, oh, do you boulder, or like, I have an idea, do you have an idea that you want to bounce off them before you open up to the rest of the world, the rest of the team? Those are opportunities to do so. But basically, it is just an opportunity to think and to sense how people are viewing you and how you are performing in the eyes of people. Then the more you meet with some people, I feel the less likely they are trying to make your life difficult for you, because they have to see you every damn week. So try to have regular things with them. The last thing was really helpful for me, and that is like try to reflect as much as possible. For me, writing helps a lot. The PM journey is not easy at the beginning, especially if you're coming from another industry. It's going to be quite challenging, I feel. For the normal person at least, and I'm pretty standard, right? So there'll be ups and downs in terms of like emotional, emotions, and sometimes you get really down. Support groups are very important, but also like writing and like, taking a reflective view of what has happened so far. Writing also helps structure your thoughts and also capture what went on during the day that you might be so busy and forgot about, but might come in handy later on in your career. Maybe you have like, a great idea that you want to implement in your day-to-day PM life, but you just didn't really get to it. because other things took precedence. Yeah, I mean, this may sound very iffy and fluffy, but it definitely is quite useful. Okay. It's very hard in the beginning, as I mentioned before, but the skills that you build while you persevere will be useful. You will not regret going through that. It is not possible to be a grade A student in everything when you're doing a PM. You'll be wearing so many hats that sometimes you have to drop certain things. That sounds terrible, and don't ever say that to your manager, but it's okay to get a grade B sometimes for things that don't matter so much. Like maybe this is not going to more than like CVP, who cares? Just do whatever bare necessary stuff. You know, the rest of the engineering team, they're smart enough to just keep functioning. They won't die or shut down. That is fine. Also okay to not do some task. Again, don't tell your manager that. While you will wear many hats and do many things, when you're actually executing them and doing them, just do one thing at a time. Don't open up multiple tabs and like be doing Scrum and like taking notes, and like you get very disorientated. At least for me, right? Even if you're awesome, you know, like multitasker, it's better to do one thing at a time. It reduces your chance for mistakes. You get deep into it, and you learn a lot faster and meaningfully and deeper. At least at the beginning. After that, you can create your own rules. Yes, cut down on meeting times. A lot of meetings are very unnecessary. You know, you just have to like show your presence there. I know maybe for junior PMs, it's very hard to control that, but I think honest conversations with the manager or the person running the meeting is very important to give feedback that I think this is not so much necessary. Like maybe I can come in like halfway in the meeting, you know. Yeah, if you cut down on meeting time, or at least I find that if I cut down on meeting time, you know, I free up a lot more time to do other important like real work that I have to do. And sometimes it's just not possible, then you can, I guess, bring your laptop and do other stuff. Kind of rude, but I would rather just not go when I'm not fully present. Does not mean that you cut down on communication. You still have to communicate as much. But to use meeting as the sole means of communication, that's wrong. Something is very wrong if the team does that. Yes, don't overstay your role if you think that it's no longer serves your purpose or your advances your learning. Sometimes you may feel that, oh, I'm a new PM, you know, like who will want to hire me? I think it's not good to think like that. I think you should always put yourself out there, always test the limits, always test the boundary. So yeah, don't stay just because you think you are not as valued or wanted as other PMs. Yeah, the last one is pretty philosophical. Yeah, no time is actually really useless because you never know the lessons until later on in life, and then you realize that, oh, it's actually very valuable. Example, like in military, I used to think that, oh, this is such a waste of time. Why am I sitting in the aerodrome like doing this and this nonsense when I want to just code, right? Then later on, now I realize, oh, actually there are valuable lessons. Like I know how to enjoy silence and stuff like that. Yeah, and I know how to do one thing at a time, and I learned that focus is important, you know? So, yeah, no part of life is really useless. I know that sounds a bit not so PME, but I think that's all I have. Thanks for listening. Keep in touch. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn, and you can email me with questions also. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Can you give an example of what your day-to-day looks like? For example, what you worked on today, to the extent that you can talk about it without disclosing anything that's confidential.
Sure, no problem. My day-to-day is actually very different day-to-day. But in general, there are a couple of things I do. I do a lot of data analysis. I'll go through certain user signals and metrics to make sure that I am, for reporting purposes and as well as to like support my prioritization of what features to build. But today it was more for reporting purposes. I do a lot of like ideation, also like figuring out what kind of new features I need to build to get to this goal. Maybe I should explain a bit of more context. So for us, we are a very big organization, and how we run the whole show is that at the organizational level, at the beginning of the work year, we will set certain goals that we want to hit. Like how many million mile, how many million in terms of revenue do we want to expand into new regions and channels? What kind of partners are we hoping to get? So each little team within that big org would have to contribute to these goals. And everything we build, we have to justify. Does it make sense? Does it actually contribute to this goal? Why do you want to build this feature? Will we get more users? Will we get more click and RPM, revenue per click, and stuff like that? So that is more of like a strategic, like contributing to the bigger organizational goal kind of work. For me, a lot of that is getting data to support that. New features, yes. This is actually the most fun part, like deciding what new features to build. And a lot of that involves competitive analysis. You go to like competitors' website, and by competitor, like the other search engine. We go through, like for me, one of my roles is I am in charge of, I'm driving the TV experience on Bing search. So anything you search on Bing TV, let me know if it's shit. Anything like TV shows, synopsis, like actors, casts, anything about TV, I'm driving that experience. So that means like if I do a search, does that search return your intent for that query? Is it terrible, or is it giving me wrong answers of like stale data and all that stuff? So I analyze how competitors are doing, and I see like, oh, where do we fall short? And what can we do better? How can we differentiate? Oh, maybe they didn't do this, we can do that. So a lot of this in ideation, in deciding what to build and all that, as I said, you need to understand the market. You need to understand what users really want, and you need to understand your advantages, what you're good at. You are not your competitor. There are some things that you just can't do. So I do a lot of that, like snooping around, and then I get ideas, and I don't copy them 100%. I was like, they do this, I hate it, but let me do something better, kind of stuff like that. So that's ideation and feature kind of work. I also run scrums. I would be, like going through the backlog with engineering, and then like holding the whip. It's like, you promised me you built this feature. Like ETA was 2 days, or ETA was 3 days ago. What's happening? And then they'll be like, oh, sorry, I got caught up in this and that. So basically, you're just like driving the whole vehicle and making sure that the whole schedule is more or less aligned to. So I talk about Scrum, I talk about feature, ideation, data. What else do I do? A lot of presentations, the upper management, preparing decks. Yeah, that's pretty much like my role in. Oh, in my previous role, I talked a lot to customers as well, selling the product. This role, not so much. Yeah.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about your internship, like how you got there and what you did and what you liked it?
Sure. Hi. Well, there's a lot of questions. Yes, how I got there was through the on-campus hiring process. It's a very well-oiled machine in MBA. So fortunately then, Microsoft was looking for MBA interns by this particular team. The other big tech who were looking for MBAs were Amazon, Starbucks, and so forth, right? But as I said, like the traditional tech don't specifically look out for MBAs, but apparently this one do. So it was actually a very lucky break for me. You go through the whole interview process as an MBA intern, like everybody else. There's very set deadlines for that because it is on campus hiring. It was good, it was intense. What happened was, first was a phone screening. Then if they like you or they think you're a good fit, they will fly you in. They did that for me. But for some people, I think there was another round. There was like a video conference as well. A video panel. So they fly you in for like the final round, which was actually very intense. It was like a full day of back-to-back interviews with people in their team, like 4 or 5 people. And if you pass the 4th one, or the second last one, like you're kind of safe. The last one is more like, oh, do I like you, kind of, like gatekeeper thing. That might vary, different team to different team. But there usually is like 4 or 5 people interviewing you with different types of questions. Like the questions I went through, how do you design this and how do you solve this? People questions as well. My internship was, let's say the benefits were amazing. It was incredible. We had a lot of perks, like we went to take a boat to look at Bill Gates' house. they they have a lot of like freebies. They gave like jackets, you know, free food, parties, ship parties. They have a lot of events organized for us. Like they took us like whitewater rafting somewhere in Leavenworth, and yeah, it was very like I think the internship at Microsoft was very well organized, and it's a very well-oiled machine as well. My experience as MBA intern was a bit different because they were not very used to MBA interns. So a lot of times they were not, they were just like, here, take this and run with it. Not very structured, but also great, you know, opportunity to learn about PM. Yeah, was that all? Okay, good. Yeah. You were first. Sorry, I'll go this. Sorry.
So thank you so much for your presentation, first of all. And some audience here and I are first year MBA student.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, if you can.
Show of hands.
Oh.
Wow.
Oh my God. Oh wow.
If you can go back to your first year MBA,
Yeah.
what would you do differently, or what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, my first year. I will take as many advanced placements courses as I possibly can. Why? Because I want to take as many courses as I possibly can, cram as much as I can. They are expensive, they're valuable. I want my money's worth, but I didn't. I enjoyed my life. That was terrible. So I would have done more classes, and I would have done more variety, and I would have done those with practicum, like you can actually work with an external company, you know, kind of thing. And even if they don't have classes like that, I would just cold call them and say, hey, I'm an MBA student, I want to practice this, do you have anything, you know? I'm working for you pro bono, but this is my constraint. I have classes, I can only work like weekends or stuff like that. And you'll be surprised at the number of people who will say yes. Like I did it to 2 companies, weather.com, they were helpful, very happy with me, but I wanted to do like pricing strategies for them, like pricing. But in the end, they asked me to solve a database problem because there was a bug. So I mean, regardless of how it turned out, like you get practical experience that you can put on your resume. So that is what I would do. If you want to, and if you have time, you can dabble in like, you know, programming and technical skills. I find that a lot of times it's not really necessary. You will learn this on the job anyway, and you will learn this in context of what your job requires. So it's not necessary to be like over prepared. But if you want to, like, if it's a hobby, it's fine. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I can't remember who was first. If you don't mind, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed is like program managers is like interchange with product managers. Can you just like differentiate?
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Microsoft names this role differently from the rest of the world. So I don't know why they do that. They call product managers program managers, whereas everyone else in the world calls it by the right name. So sorry for the confusion. Yeah. But I think on LinkedIn, oh no, we're very open about this. On LinkedIn, yeah, I put it as product management, and I think a lot of PMs at Microsoft, they also, you know, they put product management instead of like program management. Yeah, just to make sure that nothing's lost in translation.
Thank you.
Sorry, I promised her first. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have 4 years of work experience as a PM in the tech industry.
Oh, cool.
Doing my MBA now, I want to go back to the tech industry as a PM. And you might be wondering, what am I doing here? I read about you. I've got one roller coaster of a background, so I would be here just to hear you out.
Oh, I'm so honored. Yeah. It's not.
You're
Yeah.
also perfect for one question that I have been having for the
Please,
last
yeah.
2 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, I went to Microsoft on a company visit, and I met some of the people like Helen and Josh and Brad. You might know them. So on a discussion with them, they say that in Microsoft, 2/3 of the PMs have engineering background, and 1/3 have non-engineering background. I do not have any engineering background. So if I want to go back to the PM role in the United States, and if I take Microsoft as a benchmark, anyways, my chances of this role is 33% lower than somebody who has an engineering background. So my question to you is, do you have any suggestion by which I can increase this likelihood, being somebody coming from a non-engineering background?
There are suggestions, and I think you want to emphasize anything to do with any skills, experience related to the PM type as possible. Like you say, you're from the tech industry, right? I think that constitute tech background. I think that's sufficient for that. Like, although they say that, oh, we want you to have like a tech expertise, right? That can mean different things. That can mean that you have worked in the tech industry before, that you actually, have a educational background in it, but not work in it. That's for me. It was hard to get a job in tech, to be honest, after that. But because you don't remember what you learned in school, right, after graduating for it. Or you can prove yourself in some way that you understand tech. And although the formalized process may be kind of biased to people with tech education and tech, like actually work in tech, you can try to know people backdoor ways of getting in. I also would recommend like startups, because startups are more open to people with more diverse backgrounds. I think they also value like people with some business, business sense and business education. So if you can start with startups, and if it's necessary, you might have to work for them for free at first. And that was what my friend did. He worked for a startup for free, pro bono, because he couldn't get what he wanted. And then after that, he impressed them so much. They sponsored his visa. They hired him, even though they typically don't do that. Startups are more open to that, and you can bet against that.
Basically, in the project execution, we have a sprint model to a Scrum model. How it is these days, and what kind of transitions really required from the sprint model to Scrum model? How it has to be like, because everything is now feature has to be released within 3 days or 4 days.
Oh, well, I mean, there isn't really any. Okay, basically, one has a very set kind of waterfall model. Like, okay, I know I have this ship deadline. When sprint is like, as you went, you have something feature that some feature is ready, you just ship it, and that's very common for like web companies, internet companies, because they can just check in the code very easily, right? Rather than having to, compile the code, meet regulations. That's more of like the enterprise type of work. Transitioning to that, I would say it's mostly in the head. People's culture and how they can move from a very set model to something that's even faster. A lot of culture change is involved in that. Technology-wise, I don't think that's a big difference. Yeah, maybe the systems are not catered to reacting so quickly, but that's something you can change. Please.
You just got us more and more interested. No, first I want to share my feedback. Thank you for sharing your experience, not only from the skill side, but also from the life side, because I found it very not only engaging, but also inspiring. So thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure, yeah.
And I'm just curious, what do you find is the most enjoyable part and the most challenging part as a PM?
In this role, the most enjoyable part is working with really brilliant people. I work with really brilliant designers, really brilliant PMs, and like really brilliant engineers. Yeah, they are just so good that, oh my God, you can do this. And then they just make you, they just give you more like leeway to do stuff, like you suddenly realize that you can create more types of features, push the boundaries because of their skills, as opposed to some situations where, people may be like, oh, we can't do this because of that, and they become the bottleneck instead. So I'm very glad I don't have this situation, and instead I can push my boundaries. So that's something I really enjoy. Challenges, you're talking about challenges. Challenges, persuading people. Because there are always, each stakeholder, everyone have their own priorities. And then depending on who you report to, you have different standards and different expectations you have to adhere to. Now, sometimes these don't always converge very well, right? And so there will be differences in work, professional, of course. But then the funny thing is we have common goals at the very top level. So sometimes you just need to talk it out. like to align your differences. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. You briefly spoke about your internship experience. Can you just share with us a few things which you did right, which led to it being converted to a full-time offer?
That I did right.
Yeah, like what were the things which you observed other people doing right?
I can give a guess at that. Until this day, I'm not very sure. I think what I did right was I didn't piss off my manager. Yeah. No, I mean, in all seriousness, because there was a very brilliant intern, and I think he's really brilliant, his ideas. But I think his style of communication was not really appreciated by his manager, and so even though I thought that he has very good feedback and that he has very good contributions, he was not eventually given a return offer because you just got to be liked, So you got to work at it. And that's sometimes not easy when you want to do the right thing. So I think communication is very important. You got to be genuine and heart to heart and say like, I'm coming from this and all that. And then at some point you will converge and talk at a human to human level. Rather than having an artificial, formal kind of relationship. So yes, I didn't piss off my manager. Yeah. Okay, cool. Maybe her first. Yeah, sorry.
In the larger tech companies, I'm kind of curious about the internal pivots. So for example, if you're a product designer and you move on for years and eventually into senior product design, have you seen anything such as senior product designers pivoting into the product management position? Or have you heard?
I've not heard, but I think that would be quite a natural pivot. I think that's not as drastic as like, say you're in, like a teacher trying to be a product manager. It's definitely possible. You can definitely leverage on certain shared kind of skills, common skill sets, networks to people you know. I think it's quite possible.
I was thinking about that pathway.
Oh yeah, I think it's very viable, in my opinion. Yes. Was anyone here? No. Okay. Yes, you. Sorry.
So I wanted to know, how do you keep your skills sharp, right? I know you have day-to-day what you do. Outside of that, how do you kind of keep tuned and kind of keep up what's going on in the industry and where you need
keep up with the industry, very easy. Like I do have a very genuine interest in what's happening around, not just in like big tech, also small tech startups. Like some movement, I'm not sure you heard of this movement, like people try to do their own thing, side gigs and all that. It's very interesting to study their mindset. So I keep tabs on not just like the formal news, like Product Hunt and all the big news, tech news agencies. I also keep track of like what's going on in Reddit discussions. For example, there are some like indie channels where people are very excited about talking about their product, especially like people who do side gigs who don't really have the support of big companies, but you can see that they're very innovative when they're designing their products. Now these people are quite a source of inspiration for me because they have so little resources, but they can come up with such cool products. For example, there's this guy, I was reading about him, he created this browser, it's called DuckDuckGo. Now this really punches above his weight, and he was just one guy building this. Like, how did he do something that's almost as on par with Chrome, right? So yeah, that's pretty incredible, and so I just read up about all that. It's my hobby. I also write a lot about it, in my reflections. Keep up with skills. My skills, unfortunately, I just keep up with whatever I can at my job because there's a lot to do, and there's more than I can manage. Like if my job tomorrow does not require me to be good in Excel, that might just drop off the radar, not pick it up again. Yes.
Hi. One more question. Can you cite some resources that we could use to practice questions for PM interviews?
Oh, sites and resources. I use the traditional books. Like there was this book about hacking the PM interview or something like that. Cracking the PM interview, yeah. But after a while, you realize when you go through more interviews, you can kind of just put it aside and come up with your own rules. I think there are also those, I'm not sure if they're meetups, I haven't really keep tracks on that. But there are also some people have tried to come up with like a website that spurn questions, that throw out questions, and then you have a certain time to answer all that. To be quite honest, I find practice, just find people to practice with is the best. You can read up as much as you want, but nothing beats real practice. You also want to find out from the other side, as in like, try searching like, why would I hire a PM, questions like that. And then you will try to see from their perspective, what skills to build to satisfy the PM hiring demand. I think that might be useful. And then I think there are some articles on medium.com, on like the managers trying to look for certain PMs. Yeah.
All right, how about another round of applause for Alex?
Thank you.